Kalgara is an aggro deck that can kill you incredibly quickly at the cost of taking your own life. Based on the research I've done, I have found Kalgara can potentially be good into 67% of the meta spread. If you're new to this channel, my name is Joey from HPTCG, and my player stats look like this. I also at one point had a playset of top 64 Treasure Cup Yamatos and Kobes, so I believe I'm one of the most qualified people to talk about this subject, that being the meta. If you're new here, be sure to like this video so I know videos like these are appreciated, and comment down below what decks you would like to see next.
Heart Pirates TCG.
Editor's note here, I forgot to let you guys know that I am hosting a tournament today, Friday, at 5:30 p.m. Pacific for a top 64 chopper, as well as some other cards as well, some alternate arts and some playmats. So the links to my Discord is going to be down below where you can join, but you're going to be signing up on my website, moonlighttcg.com. So that's, again, today, it's a webcam locals, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Entry fee is $10 hairs, so join. All right, so let's go over the meta overview. So what beats Doflamingo? Doflamingo has a very solid matchup spread into the entire field. It loses to consistent removal. It loses to uninteractable boards. It loses to plus power leaders occasionally, like red purple Luffy, as well as black yellow Luffy. And then it loses to out healing aggression, similar to Enel, right? Like how it triggers and then it just heals and kills your stuff in the process. Now, some cards that can be good into this deck. My camera is messed up right here. Cards that can be good into this deck, you got Nolan, because it can heal a little bit. Katakuri, because it can heal a little bit. Enel, because you can't bottom deck it off Gravity Blade. Same thing with Ace. So, what beats BY? Consistent removal, being killed too quickly, hand rip effects, and big bodies. Now, some cards I think that can be really good into this matchup are Wiper, Kalgara, Ace, and Enel, because they're just big bodies and you can cheat them out very quickly. I mean, you can't cheat out Enel and Ace, but you can cheat out Kalgara and Wiper, and hopefully you're going to be able to put a lot of pressure on their life before they can actually hit their high dawn turns. Very similar to how purple Luffy actually does it. What beats Lucci? Anti-removal, like Sabo or the new Usopp and things like that. Filling up the board very quickly, and then also it loses to itself, right? So some cards, so obviously I put Kalgara the leader here because it allows you to play a bunch of characters from your hand very quickly. Also you have things like, Ohm and Holy. You have the Enel because it's anti-removal, and then Ace because it's just a heal card that also has Rush that's a 10 cost, kind of hard to get rid of. What beats Purple Luffy? Consistent removal, being killed too quickly, hand rip effects, and going wide. So of course, Omen Holy is good into this as well. Obviously, your leader allows you to play a bunch of very high cost characters very quickly. I just played against a Purple Luffy. I'm telling you, I just absolutely destroyed him. Now, I'm not sure how good these players are, but we'll, only time will tell. What beats Shanks? And sorry for this, guys. I edited out the sample watermark, and then it just completely makes it look retarded. But what beats Shanks? Consistent removal, going wide, and big bodies. So two things can beat Shanks. So going wide with Omen Holy, and then big bodies like Enel, Ace, Kalgara, Wiper, things like that, right? Last thing is what beats Blackbeard? Bottom decking, going wide, not being reliant on plays. So, for example, we have Enel that, has Rush on play, and then all of your characters you can play off of Kalgara, so you're never worried about getting starved out by Blackbeard, and you can fill up the board very quickly because your leader effect cannot be negated on your turn. So, now what beats Kalgara? Kalgara loses super, super, super hard to Gravity Blade, being killed too quickly, and then hand rip effects because this deck plays a lot of cards this deck basically searches a lot and then also takes life, so you're going to be at least 7 or 8 cards in hand pretty much every single time. All right, decks that fit this description are something like Zero and then obviously Doflamingo. So currently Kalgara has the tools to be really strong into Lucci, Shanks, Blackbeard, BY, and I forgot to put Purple Luffy on here, but Purple Luffy as well, with a losing matchup into Dofi. In theory, Kalgara can apply a lot of pressure to all these decks and see if it sees its pieces based on what these top decks struggle into, right? So because a lot of these decks struggle into aggression and going wide and also building a board very quickly, Kalgara can, in theory, do that almost as well as Doflamingo can. Obviously, it's much less consistent, but if you want a little bit of a spin on an aggro deck, Kalgara is that little spice of life right there. Also, it leaves you with a favored field spread of 67.91 based on the data that we showed you earlier. So in theory, this deck only loses really hard. Like, its only losing matchup is Doflamingo. So what does that mean? It means that we potentially, if everything goes right with this deck, could see almost 68% of the field as favored, or almost like an auto win. All right. So I'm going to show you guys a couple games and commentate over it, and then show you guys exactly what I mean by, this being favored into a lot of these meta decks. All right, guys, so this first game that we're going to go over is against Shanks. Now, I did put this in 2x speed because people are very, very, very slow on the simulator. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form a pro with this deck. I actually didn't know. I was kind of debating, should I go first with this deck? Should I go second? A couple of these games I went first. A couple of them I went second. I think going second's better, but, obviously since aggro decks like to put in aggro first, they like to have the first attack. Usually it's better to go first, so I'm still kind of up in the air about that, but, time will tell exactly what's going on. So here I decided to get rid of a 2K because I wasn't really super concerned about dying, considering I had a bunch of other 2Ks in my hand. Now, I did play the wiper from my hand. It is a 2K. It allows me to search for an extra Shandorian, I'm sorry, not a Shandorian warrior, a upper yard, and then upper yard lets me search for something. Now, I did get a little bit unlucky. I didn't find an upper yard, and I did not find a holy from the Ohm either, which lets you play a holy from your hand. So definitely not starting out amazing. Now, I will say, luckily, the people on the simulator that I played against were not amazing either, but I think with enough practice with this deck, I think, you'll be able to beat people with, higher levels of skill. But I was playing on the simulator, and because I don't really play this deck that much, I was like, you know what, maybe we're on the same footing here. Because I'll tell you, I don't know what to do against. Like, I was still kind of figuring out what to do against this deck, I would say. So I go ahead and play attack 6 with the Ohm. Now, I did make a mistake, by the way. I forgot that I could take my leader effect. I could use my leader effect first. And that way my Ohm could have been stronger. So that was a big misplay on my part. I did that like once or twice throughout the time I was recording these games. But I did. There was a couple turns where I did remember to do that. But the Nolan was able to heal me up. I am going to counter out of this. I want to put a lot of pressure in on his life. Right here, I wanted to basically just like... I think I searched for the Kalgara here. Yeah, this turn I wanted to attack him so much, and then just basically save up 3 Dawn to play a Shirahoshi and a Elthor. And I wanted to put the rest of my Dawn on all my characters to put in a crap ton of pressure. Also, the reason I wanted to prioritize playing the Shirahoshi here is because I wanted to make sure that if he played the 10 cost Shanks, that my Shirahoshi wasn't going to die, right? Also, this is when I did remember that my Ohm did gain damage or gain attack whenever I was at 2 life. So I decided to use my leader effect first. He goes ahead and triggers a Bad Manners Kick Course, which minuses 3,000 power to my Kalgara, which is unfortunate. I'm not gonna lie. So I decided, instead of going, it was supposed to be 7, 7, 8. Now it's going to be 6, 7, and then an 8 into leader. Or I believe it's a 7 into leader because he minused it by 1. So I think this is another... No, I'm sorry. This is still an 8. My bad, guys. And then I'm going to do the same play I told you about. Play the Shirahoshi and save up a Dawn for Elthor. That way I'm pretty much covered on all fronts. And because I have such a wide board, there's not really much he can do. Even a Rayleigh here wouldn't do much because I can counter... The only thing he can kill is a Ohm. And I'll counter out of everything else. And then next turn I have like 5 9s going to his face, so he plays a Rayleigh right here. Rayleigh pops the Ohm, and then he tries to swing into the Kalgara here, and I give him an Elthor. And then, like I said, guys, like, this is basically the blueprint of like how you can beat a lot of these decks. They do lose to aggro, which is why Dofi's so strong, because Dofi not only can be aggressive, but it can be very very mid-range and like kind of control the board in a way like that. So but it can be aggressive, which is why it's so good. And, as an aggressive deck like Kalgara, this is why it's also pretty strong. Now, I'm just finishing up doing the math here, but it's basically 9999999 across the board, and I end up getting a swift and decisive victory. So let's go ahead and go to the next game, yeah? Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys as well. I was watching the Lakers versus Warriors game today when I was recording this. So, if I didn't make like the most optimal play, like a competitive tournament level optimal play, I apologize. But for the most part, I could say like I can pay very little attention and still, I feel like, do pretty decent. Probably like you know, playing in a 95 percentile rather than, you know, a 99 percentile, because a lot of these decks are they kind of function the same way, I would say. A lot of it's just like kind of analyzing board state. Now, I will go over my decision making here, by the way, because I decided instead of swinging 8, it's always better to develop a board rather than just swing 8. And I was in a little bit of a weird spot here because I was like, damn, I don't have anything to really like use my leader effect on. But I did want to flood the board, so I was like, you know, fuck it, man. I'm gonna go ahead and use my leader effect to play this wiper from my what is it called? This wiper from my hand. And luckily I was able to find an upper yard, and upper yard was able to find me a Kalgara, even though I did bottom deck 2 of them. And I was like, okay, I'll play Ohm, and then Ohm will play Holy because I can guarantee get that. So now if you actually look at my board state, I have 4 5Ks on the board, which is very Dofi-esque, right? Very similar to Doflamingo. So, you know, I took a bad situation and I made it like a little bit better. Ideally, you wouldn't want to play the 2K from your hand. You'd want to play something like Wiper, and then you'd play the Ohm and Holy, but you know, you do what you can, right? You know, I find a lot of times when you're in bad situations, you kind of just have to make the best of it. I mean, of course, right? That's like simple enough to say, but I realized that obviously Purple Luffy loses to aggro. So instead of me, you know, basically just swinging tall with 2 characters and like saving my characters for like a better turn, I'd rather just flood the board with a suboptimal character and be able to take a bunch of cards out of his hand on the next turn, because the next turn is very important. Now this guy makes a mistake. He ramps trying to use the Onami effect, but obviously Luffy Taro minuses. I'm splitting out my Dawn to see how many 7Ks I can do, but I realized because I want to save the Dawn for Elthor and because I want to play the Kalgara, I don't have as much Dawn to swing as many 7s as I'd like to, so I believe I settled for like, you know, a 5, a 6, or a 5, 2 6s, and I believe 2 7s. I believe is the math here. But then again, guys, I forget the Ohm here. I forget that if I take my life, then Ohm. So I could have swung 7 7 7 across the board. So that one's on me, guys. But they ended up blocking anyway, which is like fine, you know. So that means obviously this guy did not have a lot of counter if he blocks a 6K. So I guess he would have blocked either way. Now because he did counter this, I was like, you know what, I don't really need to put you at 1 here. I can try to take out the Zoro Joro and basically protect my board on the following turn, because I'm going to try to kill you, you know, on the crackback. You can't even play Big Mom next turn anyway, so I'm not worried about you healing, and you're pretty much just dead regardless. So he does counter out of that and gives me 2 cards, which is like, honestly, that's totally fine. And he's going to try to take out my board right here. Like I said, I don't think this guy was like the most amazing Purple Luffy player. But I mean, I did flood the board really quickly. I mean, he did go the perfect curve. Like, other than playing the Onami there, like he would have just played the Zoro Joro, right? So like, other than the Onami. So I would have basically had him in the same position, except for he would have had like maybe 1 extra life, but maybe not even that, because he didn't have a blocker to protect. So he probably would have been in the same position, and I could have countered out of lethal anyway and killed him on the following turn. So I feel like this deck is like probably pretty strong into Purple Luffy. It's probably one of its better matchups, I would say. And I didn't even start out very strong either. Now I will, this game's pretty much over right here. I will go ahead and show you the BY matchup. This guy did not play amazing, the BY player, but I'll show you the game anyway. Alright guys, so this is the BY game. Now, I did start out a little weird. I think this is actually the first game I played. I think this is the first game I played with the deck, and I was still trying to kind of figure it out. So I mulligan. Luckily, I got an upper yard. I was able to search for the Holy, trying to find an Ohm. That's kind of like my thought process on that one right there. But I'm not gonna lie, like this guy was doing a lot of like weird stuff. Like this guy was like basically awakening every turn from like 4 life, so, or from 3 life. It was like a really weird it was a really weird like play. I'm not gonna lie, like this guy was basically Hiorying on like 3 life and like being a 7K leader. So like I legitimately like could not actually same thing by the way here, guys. Like I just want to flood the board instead of just going really big, right? So, I could swing 9 or I could swing 6 and then play 5K, which is what I prefer. But yeah, this guy was just like being a 7K leader the whole time, and it was actually working like low key. Like, so I'm not sure if this deck might actually be good into BY, because the strategy this guy was doing was like kind of, I don't know if it was good or bad, I can't tell, but like it was hard for me to rush him down. But also it was hard for me to rush him down because I had like a pretty slow start, I would say. Like I didn't have Omen Holy, but now I just got freaking the combo, the Wombo combo, which is Kalgara plus Nolan to heal. So like that was, I was like, okay, like maybe you know, I can start kind of putting pressure on him. You know, I'm establishing a 5K, a 6K, another 8K. I still have my leader, but you know, him being a 7K leader pretty much the whole game was very tough for me to put aggro on him in the beginning, especially without like a without like my best start. So then he goes ahead and goes to Rocket Luffy, draws a card, pops the Holy, and I was like, okay, like this is gonna be pretty tough because I have to play on curve at least for like the next like turn or two, because I want to play the Enel next turn. That's the idea, right? Then he plays the Kuzan here, and I'm like, the best I can do is just a 7-7-8 right here. Now this guy, I feel like he plays it a little weird. Normally he's supposed to block with the Sabo. Realistically, what he should have done. So I swing 8. I think I swing 7. I'm not entirely sure actually. What do I do here? I think I leave the Nolan active. I swing 7. Yeah, I play the Enel here. I swing 7. And then normally you're supposed to just take the life and then block the other one. I thought that was pretty weird. But because he countered with the card, I was like, okay, I'm not gonna give you a life, right? And obviously for free. So I was like, I'll make you use a 2K from your hand to awaken, or like an Ivankov or something like that. And I'll keep my characters active. But he did have the Flampe. I was like I said, this guy was kind of throwing me off because I was like, like if you had the Awakeners, why are you like, I don't know, like, I don't know, he was just playing like really weird, and it was kind of hard for me, especially because I was watching the Lakers game. I was like looking over, like I was expecting him to do something, and then I would like look over, and he would not do it. I'd be like, okay, let me reassess what's going on here. So it was pretty tough. But as you can see, like this guy, like he keeps like using his babies to like awaken, but he's just going to such low cards in hand that it's like, my brother in Christ, like, what are you doing? Now, if it were me personally, I would have just like triple blocked with Sabo here. But even then, that's not amazing. I think he was just like giving me a bunch of cards from his hand, which I was like, okay, like I guess I'll take it. I think the goal here was just to Nolan heal a life and then play a blocker, just keep establishing a board. He can't be a 9k leader forever. I mean, technically he can if he has a Gecko here. He is going to be able to pop the Kalgara, which does suck, I'm not going to lie. Them having Kuzan does actually kind of hurt this deck a lot. So, but also the thing is, you can't really hold out for like something like Gadatsu in this deck. It's just not how this deck plays. So unfortunately, they're just going to have to go into Kuzan. But I do think us going second is better in this matchup, so they don't drop Kuzan, because I'd rather them drop like a 5-cost Luffy, and usually that's what they do anyway, right? They drop a 5-cost Luffy on their 5-Dawn turn instead of a Kuzan. But I will say, that's probably not very good either, because I don't want to die that easily. So, yeah, this guy's going down to really low cards in hand. So I think I'm just going to go 4 7s across the board. And I think I'm just going to play like a... I forget what I'm going to play. I'm going to save a Don up for Elthor, of course. And then I think I'm going to play a... I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't even remember. I don't even remember. But I have 6 Don up. It's just a... Oh, I'm sorry. It's a Wiper. I didn't see the Wiper in my hand. I'm going to search for something. By the way, guys, this card like kind of blows in this deck. It can't search for like anything. Like there's like no Shandor in Warriors in this deck other than like 4. So it's just a body that you can play, which is why I play him. Hopefully this deck gets support, in the future. I know you are able to search for the 10 cost now that's coming out in EVO 2, so that's going to make it a lot better. I think the event will be a lot better too, the 2 cost event. I think it's 2 cost, right? Or is it 3? The one that searches for a 4 cost or higher. So that's going to be pretty strong, I feel like, because that'll give you a turn 2 play. But yeah, this guy basically just like admits defeat right here. He swings 9 first and then 7. Like the math is just messed up. And I was like, I think I can counter out of a 13 anyway, but just to be safe. I don't know what he's going to do. So yeah, he just admits defeat right here. But that's this deck, right? I don't have any games of the other ones, but that's kind of like the gist of it. But that's it. I will say, while I do think that this deck does have some merit in certain matchups, I think its overall really bad matchup into Doflamingo makes it a little less than viable, because in a 10-round tournament, if you're going for a top 64, there's a chance that you can dodge Dofi. Because I will say, there's a guy that I was coaching on Red Purple Law in set, I think it was 6. And his worst matchup was Sakazuki, and he went to a regional and got top 64 and dodged every single Sakazuki, which was like absolutely crazy, right? So, and Sakazuki obviously had a high matchup spread as well. So realistically, if you're going for a top 64, you can dodge Doflamingo and potentially get a top 64. If you're going for a top 8, I don't think this deck is very viable, because you're going to play a Doflamingo of, once probably, and then you're probably going to lose to the Doflamingo. So with that being said, I think that I'm going to continue doing this series because there's a lot of underexplored decks right now, and I think it's really cool to bring them into light and show you exactly what cards are good in that color into the matchup spread, and try to explain how the deck works and how it functions into other decks in the matchup, and figure out, what its best case scenario is. So let me know what y'all would prefer next, because I'm kind of open to ideas, and I'll see you guys in the next one.